So you're a systems administrator for a Linux box, and you need to run some sort of task, let's say every hour. How do you do that if you only work an 8-hour day? Well, that's where Cron comes in. Cron is a utility that allows you to run specific tasks at various time intervals, from every minute to every hour to every day to every year, or even various increments within those parameters. So that's what we'll talk about today, is how to create something called cron jobs. The smart and efficient Linux administrator will learn how to schedule tasks. For example, scheduling backups overnight, removing unnecessary files, or doing large file transfers over the network, or scheduling any of the tasks that are very time-consuming and computationally intensive. And this is where Cron comes in. Cron allows the administrator to schedule tasks. The Cron utility allows the administrator to schedule tasks on a minute-by-minute, daily, weekly, or monthly basis. It's also good because you may want to allow individual users, not just root, to run scheduled tasks, and Cron allows you to do this. The simplest method for specifying a cron job, as they're called, is to save each job as a separate shell script in an appropriate directory. And we'll see that there's several directories residing under the etc directory that have the name cron in them. For example, etc cron.daily is for jobs that to be run each day. So once a day, each file in that directory is run, and these files are executable shell scripts, which we've covered previously. There are equivalent directories for monthly, weekly, and possibly even hourly jobs. Note that the files that reside in these directories are run with root permissions because they are residing under the etc directory. So normally only root can set up cron jobs this way, but a little later we'll show you how you can set up your own cron jobs. So we're in our Ubuntu 10. Let's go to the etc directory, and so let's go to the etc directory and do an ls for cron. And you'll see there's several files and several directories. We have a file called Crontab, which we'll go into more depth in a few minutes. And this is a file that contains cron jobs. But notice also that there is a cron.d directory, which is also used to hold shell scripts. But even more importantly, you have these 4 directories here: cron daily, hourly, monthly, and weekly. Notice that each of these directories contains files that are executable shell scripts. The idea behind this is that you may want to run a task daily, hourly, monthly, or weekly. The best way to schedule those tasks is by creating a shell script and then uploading them into one of these 4 directories. Thereafter, Linux will run each of these commands based upon its location in one of these directories. For example, let's take a look at the Aptitude Script. So we'll need to go to cron.daily, and let's look at the, let me open this in VI instead. And you see here that it's a shell script. It's the first thing it does is that it sets a variable back to variable backups, and then it does some fancy little footwork here where it compares the package states with the package states that's contained in the var lib aptitude directory, and copies them and then sends the log to dev null. And so because this is contained in the cron.daily directory, it will be run once per day without any input by the system administrator. Now let's look at a very simple example. So we see that we can schedule tasks by simply placing shell scripts in the appropriate directory under the etc directory. Another way that we can create cron jobs is through the Crontab application. And Crontab is a simple application that allows you to install and run cron jobs using the Crontab file. So you access cron jobs that are contained within that Crontab file we saw previously that was located under the etc directory. using the Crontab editor. And you can set the editor you use in your .bash rc file by using the export capitalized editor equals whatever editor you want to use. By default, I think that's set to VI, but you can also set this to Nano. And so using the syntax crontab-e, this will brings up the editor and the contents of your cron file and the contents of your Crontab file. Or if you don't have one, it will create one. So Crontab-e allows you to edit your Crontab file or create one if it doesn't already exist. Crontab-l will display the contents of your Crontab file. Crontab-r removes your Crontab file, and I've never had to use this. And Crontab-v displays the last time you edited your Crontab file. And notice that I shamelessly stole this from this location on the web. Now let's look at what the contents of a Crontab looks like. Notice that the first line is our shebang bin sh for the bourne shell. Here I'm setting the variable mail_to equal to PC, and that means that the results of this running of the Crontab file will be emailed to PC on the local system. This also means that I'm probably running these as a regular user, not root. And then we have two color-coded lines here, and we'll go over in more detail what these first 5 columns means. This is saying at 3 a.m. in the morning I want to run the command ls-al for home PC directory and redirect that to a file called listing. The second line says at 1:01 a.m. on Monday through Friday I would like to remove all files that have the extension temp from the directory home PC temp. Now let's see if we can understand what all the numbers and asterisks mean. Notice that there were 5 columns we saw before. The first column stands for the minute that you want to run the command. Notice that the value range is between 0 and 59 minutes. The second column here in gold stands for the hour, and the value here is from 0 to 23, which means that we're essentially using military time here. So if we had a 0 and a 0 here, that would mean midnight. If we had a 0 here and 12, that would mean 12 noon. The next line here is for the day of the month, and the value range here ranges from 1 to 31. The asterisk here means every day. If we look back at the previous 2 columns, let's say we had an asterisk here as well, this would mean every hour. If we had an asterisk right here, it would mean every minute. If we move to the orange shaded area, we see that this stands for the month. And the valid values in this range are from 1 to 12, with January equal to 1, February equal to 2, and so on, up into December equals 12. Note that instead of using numbers here, you can also use the actual values: January, February, March, April, May, and so on. However, typically I don't think I've ever seen the actual names of the months being used, but you're more likely to find that somebody will actually use the numeric values. The 5th column is for the day of the week, and the value ranges from 0 to 7. And this is where it gets a little weird, because Sunday is 0 and it is also 7. So whether you use 0 or 7, it always stands for Sunday. And with Monday equal to 1, Tuesday equal to 2, Wednesday equal to 3, and so on. If you had an asterisk in this column, this would mean every day of the week. Finally, something you didn't see in the previous simple example is the word root. And what this is saying is execute the command as a root user. If you don't have the word root in here, then it's going to be run as the regular user that created the Crontab job. And finally, we have the actual command to execute. And so if we want to interpret interpret this entire command, what this is saying is execute backup.sh script every Sunday at 2:36 a.m. And so while it might look complex at first, this is actually quite easy to understand if you just parse the individual columns one at a time. So let's take a look at a few examples before we actually run some of these cron jobs, before we actually create some of the cron jobs. So if we had a 30, 0, 1, this would say that every 30 minutes, and actually this could be a 0 or an asterisk, day of the month, that's the first day of the month is either January, June, or December, and regardless of the day of the week, run whatever script is being called. In the second row, we have 0 and 20, which would be 8 p.m. Day of the month is an asterisk, which means every day of the month, and the month is 10, which would mean October. And this says day of the week, which actually overrides the day of the month, because now it says run it 1 through 5, and so that would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Or in other words, this is saying run whatever script is associated with this 8 p.m. every weekday, but only in October. In the third row, we have a 0 and a 0, which would mean midnight. Day of the month is the 1st, the 10th, and the 15th. Notice that we have asterisks in the month and in the day of the week. So we're saying to execute this shell script on midnight on the 1st, 10th, and 15th of every month. Finally, we have a 5. In the last row, we have a 5, a comma, a 10, and a 0. So the 0 standing for midnight, so this is saying at 12:05 and at 12:10 of every month, on the 10th of each month, and also every Monday, run this command. So note that those fields are almost in ascending order except for the day of the week. And the command is run when the fields match the time that's specified in your Crontab job. Notice that a field containing an asterisk always matches. Note that 3-letter abbreviations can be used for the month and the day names. So here we've got Friday at 5:30, run the shell script weekly backup. And we're running it as root. Note that you can specify a range with a hyphen. So here we have 15 and 45, 9 to 1700 hours, which means from 9:15 until 5:45 on Monday through Friday, run the shell script check faxes. Numbers rather than names must be used for months and days and lists and ranges. And so a step through a range is specified with a slash. So here in the first column we have 30. In the second column we have an 8-18. So if we just take this by itself, this is saying from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. But notice this has a /2. This means that run this command every 2 hours. So at 8, 10, 12, 2, 4, and 6, this script would be run as long as it's Monday through Friday. So let's do some very simple examples so you can become accustomed to how cron works with shell scripts. Let's create a silly little script that outputs the date every minute to a log file called date.log. So let's go ahead and create a folder called scripts, and then let's go into our scripts folder and let's create a shell script called date.sh. And so we need to precede everything with a shebang, and then the shell we're going to use to execute the script. And now we want to type date, and we want to output that to a file in our home directory called date.log. That's a silly little shell script, but it kind of gives you a flavor for how cron will work, and we can actually see it work in real time. And notice that I used two greater than signs here, so I'm appending the date to the date.log file. Remember, we're going to be setting this up so it runs every minute, so we can actually watch it update in real time. If I were to only use the greater than sign, that would mean every time this command ran, it would overwrite the previous contents of the date.log file. But that's not what we want. We want to append it to the date.log file. And if you think about it, that's how all system logs are written out, is that information is appended to it, it doesn't overwrite it. So let's go ahead and save this. And of course, we need to make this executable. Right now it's only read write. And so let's chmod 750 so that I can execute this script, or better yet, or better said, that it executes as PC. And now you see that it's executable. And now we can edit our Crontab file. Notice it's already got something in here that I created earlier. And for illustrative purposes, we're just going to run this every minute. And so we can do this. And then we tell it the location of the script. And we call that date.sh. And so what this is saying is that every minute of every hour of every day of the month and so on, we want to run this date.sh script. Let's write and quit. And now that, notice that the Crontab application said installing a new Crontab, so we know that it did install. And now what we want to do is to open another terminal. So let's take a look at the script I've created, my backup.sh. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a tar gzip file, create file, and gzip it. We're going to name that mybackup.tgz, and it's going to tar and gzip all the files in the text directory. So let's go to the text directory and take a look at that. Oops. First we have to go up here where it's located, and we see that it has several files in here. And so again, we're going to run this every minute, every hour, and so on, so you can see how this updates in real time. And so let's go in and let's create our Crontab job, and we can do this from anywhere. So Crontab-E, and you notice that essentially that's what I had previously, but I've changed the location of the Crontab job. And so I've moved that Crontab job to the scripts directory. So we need to indicate where it's running. Why do I need to indicate where the location of the shell script is? Recall that when we type most Linux commands like rm, ls, and so on, the reason that it executes from anywhere on the system is because those files are executables that are located within our path. if an executable is located within our path, it will execute as long as we type the name of the executable from the command line. However, if a script or executable is not within our path, then we need to explicitly specify the location of that shell script or executable. And here it's saying it's in my home, under my home directory, under the directory scripts, and the name of that shell script is mybackup.sh. Let's write that out, and let's look at, first of all, we need to go back to the scripts directory, and let's take a look at mybackup.sh. Notice that I've already made it executable, so it will execute. And I know this file already exists, so what we're going to do is, there's mybackup.tgz. Let's remove that .tgz, and it's no longer there. And now let's see if by typing date, so in about 27 seconds that shell script will execute, and we will see that we will once again have a mybackup.tgz, and we can go back in and look at the contents of it to make sure that our shell script worked appropriately. So we have about 8 seconds left, and now let's do an ls and see if the file is there, and the file is back. So the shell script worked. Let's take a look at the contents of that file, and so we can type tar tf, which will allow us to view the contents of the file, and there's the contents. So while we're doing this, let's go back in and let's create several more files in that directory and see if the contents are updated within the next minute. So let's touch foo, bar, badge, New Orleans. I'll do this quickly, New York, whatever, there. So now we have some more files that will be added to that backup. And it now should have run again. And let's type tar tf mybackup.tgz, and you notice that the contents have been updated. New York, New Orleans, foo, bar, and whatever. Okay, so that's a silly example, but what we want to do is let's go back in to our cron tab, and let's delete that one, and let's concentrate on the my backup. Okay, when might we want to back up our files? Let's say at midnight of every night. And so we can change that to a 0, or we can change it to a 00 for minutes, and we can change that to 0. Whoops. There. And we need to add one more asterisk to it. And so what this says is, at midnight of every day of the month and every month is to run this shell script. If I wanted to run it at 3 a.m., it's going to run it at 3 a.m. If I wanted to have it run only in every other, let's say I wanted this to run every 5 days. So there's several ways we could do this. We could say 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And so essentially This is saying at 3 a.m. on the 5th, 10th, 15th, 20th, 25th, and 30th of the month, on every month, run this backup. Or let's say we wanted this to run on the hour, and at 15 minutes, and at 30 minutes, and at 45 minutes. So that would say, in fact, let's make this a little different. And let's change this from an asterisk. So what this is saying, that every, on the hour, 15 minutes, 35 minutes, and 45 minutes of every hour, on the 5th, 10th, 15th, 20th, 25th, and 30th, run this shell script. And then we could change this to, was there a simpler way to do this? What if we'd put 0, let's take this out, 0 to 59, whoops, and we make it a range, and then we divide that by 4. That would pretty much be the same thing as we had before. And if we did this and changed this from 0 to 30 divided by 5, that would have also done the same thing as we saw previously. And so, as you can see, well, let's do a little more. Let's go back here, take some of this out. So we're back to running it every minute. And if we want to go back, and we only wanted to run this on Sundays, we could type 0, let's say Sundays at midnight. And so at midnight, only on Sunday, run this shell script. Or we could just change this to Sunday. Hopefully these simple illustrations have shown you the power of Crontab for scheduling tasks. It's kind of difficult to understand at first, so what you really have to do is to get in here and create a few shell scripts, put them in a Crontab job, and then just see if they run.